Pow! 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 Hello everyone, welcome back to the Reaver Approach channel. Today we're going to be talking about some of the fears and maybe some misconceptions that you have as a new gun owner. If you are a pro, then this is all going to be information you probably know, but this is definitely more oriented towards the new shooter. There's going to be loads that I've missed. So if you are a pro and you want to add your tips into the comments, I'm sure that we can all learn together. The first thing that we would need to talk about is just safety. A lot of new gun owners, they are really nervous about handling a firearm for the first time. They're worried about if it's gonna go off, the proper way to handle it, things like that. And that's okay. There should be a certain amount of anxiety that happens when you are handling a dangerous tool. So that's all right. The first step on getting over that is just understanding how your gun works. We're gonna be primarily talking about handguns today. Just for the sake of brevity. Handle your firearm. It's okay to handle your gun. After you buy it, don't be the gun owner that takes it, buys it, sticks it underneath their bed, and when the time calls for it, if ever, hopefully not, they don't have the confidence on how to handle that firearm.
And what gave you the confidence?
Delusion.
So first things first is just understanding the controls. What that means is you're going to have to handle your gun. So after you get it, when you're comfortable with it, make sure the weapon is unloaded. Of course, your ammo's in a different room. Do whatever you got to do to make sure that you're safe, and then just go through the mechanics of your firearm. First thing you should learn how to do is make sure that you can check the chamber to see if it's loaded or not.
Hey, I can almost see right down the barrel.
For just some sort of autoloader, you're gonna pull it back and you can look inside the chamber. If you want to be extra safe, you can pull it back and then get your little finger in there, and then you'll be able to see if there's a bullet in that chamber. Oftentimes you're gonna see like a shiny piece of brass or something like that, but you'll be able to see it in there. Next is making sure that you know how to work the magazine release, and it's all pretty simple. You can just practice your reloads as you're watching TV, something like that. Next is you should be able to lock the slide back. Usually that's gonna be some sort of slide release right here. No big deal, it's very simple. Pull it back, lock it back. Every gun's gonna be a little bit different, but the fundamentals are gonna be right about the same. Next is you should be able to take apart your firearm and be able to clean it. Everyone's a little bit different, but usually it just means rolling a pin, taking the slide off, and then clean the barrel and the spring. It's very simple. More than likely, there's going to be a YouTube video online that's going to teach you how to do that. And then just understanding that your gun is not gonna go off unless you pull the trigger, okay? And so understanding how that works. Is it safe to have your finger on the trigger? I know a lot of new shooters, when they first go to the range, they end up keeping their finger off the trigger until they're ready to shoot, and that's okay. And then they're aiming at their target, their finger is still off the trigger, they're aiming at the target, they're aiming at the target, and then they're ready to fire and they quickly pull it off, pull their finger down and pull the trigger. All right, as you're learning, that's okay. But just know that if you're pointing at something that is safe to shoot, so at your target, it's okay to have your finger on your trigger. You can have it on there, you can give it a nice gentle pull. That's okay. So long as you're pointing it in a safe direction, that's all right. I know that's something a lot of new gun owners oftentimes struggle with, is just understanding, because they know, like, I shouldn't touch the trigger unless I'm ready to shoot. And you're absolutely right. But if you're aiming in a safe direction, you can go ahead and have a nice slow trigger pull. It is okay to have your finger on there once you're ready to fire. That's just a little caveat. I posted a short recently and I mentioned something about one of the best parts of getting a new gun is just, playing with it, going through the mag exchanges, things like that. And a lot of people jumped on there who are not gun people, I can assure you. Kind of like, it's not a toy. Trust me, I get that. No firearm is a toy. However, it's okay to have fun with your firearms. You can go out to the range and shoot with your buddies and have a really good time so long as you're being safe. The main point of that is learning the mechanics and the function of your firearm. So oftentimes I'll just go through, I'll work the mag release, I'll do all that. And a lot of people do that. And that's gonna make sure that you understand how your firearm works. Safety is going to come from understanding how your gun works. If you do not understand how it works, how can you be safe with it? The only thing that you're gonna be able to do is just ignore it. That's gonna be the safest thing for you. Safety is gonna come with understanding. If you understand your firearm, how it works, how it functions, and taking the time to learn how to do that, and then teach anyone that would be possibly handling it, then you're going to be much more safe and much more confident. That way, if the time were to ever call for some sort of self-defense situation, God forbid, you at least know that you know how to work your firearm up. Oof. Another question that gets asked a lot is just picking the right one. If you are a first-time gun owner, I think a handgun of some kind is going to be what you're looking for if you're just looking for personal defense. There's a lot of flexibility to it, so that's probably going to be my recommendation. Now, don't take that as law. If you'd rather have like a rifle or something, no big deal. Do what you think is right, but I think my recommendation is you're going to have a handgun because it's very, very versatile. As far as picking the firearm that you think is best for you, there's a lot of reviews online as far as like what's a good handgun and what's not. I don't always trust the gun counter. I've listened to some really dumb things said.
Okay, I'm the only one in this room professional enough that I know of to carry this Glock 40. I'm the only one.
So do your homework, talk to some people, maybe talk to your gun friends. There's gonna be bad advice everywhere, of course. Some of you might think that this is bad advice, okay? I've neither been there nor done that. I'm just some dude on the internet LARPing in the wilderness with red sunglasses on. I am just trying to give my information to you. Make your decision with what you think is fit. However, sometimes a dead giveaway on if a gun is maybe reputable or not is its holster availability when we're talking about handguns. If there's no holsters made for it, then that means it's probably not a very popular handgun, which means nobody wants to make holsters for it because it hasn't caught on, or it's just an unreliable firearm, or it's just not that popular. I'm a huge fan of having something that you can buy mags for it very easily, you can buy accessories for it very easily, and you can buy holsters for it very easily. So this is by no means doctrine in regards to this comment, but it can be some sort of giveaway. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of reputable brands. If you haven't heard any brands, Glock is going to be what gets recommended to everyone. It's always probably going to be my recommendation for a first-time gun owner. There's also SIGs, HKs. HKs are a little bit more higher price and maybe a little bit more Gucci, and they might have some things on it that you don't need. Glock is very, very reliable. So if you're a first-time gun owner looking for something along that category is not going to disappoint you one bit. Next is you should be comfortable handling it or doing what you want to do with it. So if you're planning on concealed carrying it, then maybe something that's as large as, say, this VP9, which is about the size of a Glock 17, probably wouldn't be a really good choice for you. If you're a smaller person, you want something a little bit more comfortable, or your clothing just doesn't facilitate that. So go in with what you're looking to get out of it. Something to remember is small guns don't mean less recoil. Oftentimes, those small guns are gonna have a lot more recoil. They're gonna be very uncomfortable to shoot. However, if you have, say, smaller hands, then maybe a single stack or something smaller is gonna be a little bit easier because you can actually get your hands around it. In order to find what you are comfortable with, you need to be able to go and then handle it. Go to the firearms store, try out a bunch of things. Don't just take one list and say like, oh, this guy on the internet said to go buy a Glock 19. Good gun, of course. However, if you go to the gun counter and you pick up the Glock and it's like, that doesn't feel really good to me, then that isn't gonna suit you very well. So maybe go in with some recommendations, 5 or 6 recommendations that you've got, and then try them all out and then see what you like. If none of them work, don't just settle on one because there's so many different options. You can absolutely find something that feels comfortable in your hand. Maybe it points a little bit better for you. The controls make a little bit more sense in your brain. I know when I first bought a handgun, I bought one that I have the airsoft gun of when I was a young kid. And then it was great because everything came naturally. I know how to reload it, racking the slide, the slide release, all those types of things. And it came a lot more naturally to you. If you've got some experience in that sort of thing, then maybe that might be a good option for you if you know it felt good in your hands. It's okay to try something out. Go to a couple gun stores, think about it. It doesn't have to be a rush decision. Oftentimes there's going to be the idea of like having a revolver versus some sort of autoloader like this, much more modern. There's pros and cons to each. I'm always going to say, hey, I think autoloaders like this, so not a revolver, is going to be the best option. However, there are a lot of people that maybe have a hard time manipulating the slides. It's a little bit harder to work. If they're older, then they might not be able to work that as well. Maybe they've got some hand issues, small hands issues. Whatever it might be, a revolver would be a better option because they don't need to manipulate that. So, consider that with going in. You do need to be able to operate the firearm. And if you are struggling to pull it back or work the action, then that might not be the best option for you. There are some autoloaders. I think it's a Shield EZ, something like that. I'll asterisk it in somewhere. Did I do it? Anyway, they're made to be a little bit easier to work and easier to load because that does include the magazines as well. Some magazines, especially if you're older, have some hand issues, loading the magazines can be really, really hard. And that's not an issue that you have with a revolver. Now, there's other drawbacks that come back with a revolver, but just something to keep in mind. Next is going to be traveling with your firearm. This was another question someone asked me. How do you travel with your gun? So if you're just going to, say, the range and things like that, you're not a concealed carry holder, my recommendation is just keep it in the box that it came in, keep the ammo in a separate separate bag. That way when you're driving, because your range is probably going to inspect your ammo anyway. And so just keeping it unloaded, especially as you're learning, that's going to be my recommendation. That way everything's safe. If say you are on the way to the range and you get pulled over and you're either a concealed carry holder or you've got the gun in the car, how do you tell the officer? Should you tell the officer? I'm a pretty firm believer of telling the officer. I give them that courtesy. Sometimes they will ask and you can just say, yes, I have X, Y, or Z. Obviously, keep your hands on the steering wheel. You don't want to spook the officer. What I've always done is when they pull me over, I keep my hands on the steering wheel and I say, officer, I have a concealed carry permit. My firearm is a Glock 19 on my 5 o'clock. How would you like me to proceed? And then every single time that I brought this up is they said something along the lines of, my gun will stay in my holster if yours stays in yours. And that seems like a fair deal to me. So that's fine, you get that out of the way, and at least you're not worried about that as you go through the traffic stop. I think the officers deserve that courtesy. That is gonna be up to you as well. In some states, there may be a law that says you do have to tell the officers, so make sure that you're doing your homework in your area. That way you're not doing anything wrong. Every state traveling is gonna be a little bit different as well, like traveling with guns and ammunition. With that, make sure that you're following your state laws. Look up that information to make sure that you're not going to break any laws. I can only speak for my state, and you should not take what I have as doctrine or law. This is just a springboard to getting you to the point of confidence and safety. Next, and this is kind of a big one, is just perception. How people view you when you own a gun. This can be challenging because if, say, you grew up in an area where guns are very common, it's not a big deal to own a firearm. However, there are a lot of places, and maybe your family's like this, where they're not for owning firearms. They're not, for one reason or another, whether it's their politics, they've had some issues in the past, whatever it might be, you can't change their mind about those types of things. Everyone has their heels dug into it so much that I don't think you'll ever be able to change their mind as far as like their perception of firearms. Something to know is you don't have to tell them. There's no rule that says if you buy a firearm, you have to go to your Instagram and tell everyone that you now have a gun. If that's something you're worried about, then maybe just keep it to yourself. I know how certain friends view me because I own firearms, and it can be really frustrating because they think I'm something that I'm not. I own firearms, but it doesn't mean like I'm, some bloodthirsty killer that they make you out to be. Anyway, so you don't have to tell everybody. Oftentimes, it's a lack of understanding where you're coming from and the reasons why you want that. Like I said, I can't change anyone's perspective. I wish I had a really good answer for you, but that's gonna be a battle that you have to fight, but maybe you just don't tell them. There's no rule that says you have to tell everybody that you own a gun. Next is children, and this goes hand in hand with safety. If you have a child, how do you make sure that they're safe, and how do you make sure that precautions are taken, that they understand firearms and how they work? Now, I'm not a parent and I probably never will be one. However, I do think that children should be taught how firearms work, or at least how to identify them and to know to stay away from them. If I say didn't have firearms in my house, that does not mean that when my son goes over to someone else's house that there isn't firearms over there. And I can only make sure that I'm being safe. Hopefully their house is safe. However, if they see something somewhere, maybe there's a handgun sitting on the kitchen table because someone didn't put it away, whatever it might be, at least they know that they can identify what it is and they know to leave it alone and get an adult. I need an adult! I need an adult! I think that is going to be the bare minimum that you should teach your children, especially if you have it in your own house. So they should identify it, they know how to identify it, and they know they shouldn't touch it. And they should get an adult. That's going to help them both in your house as well as anywhere else. As far as teaching your children how to handle and manipulate firearms, that is going to be up to you as a parent. I think that is the maturity level of your child. I cannot speak for that. I am not their parent. You are. My recommendation is at least teach them how to identify and to get an adult. Going with that is making sure that if you have it in your house, that you are safe with it. If you still want ready access to it because you're wanting it for like self-defense, then having some sort of safe within your house, like a biometric one or a mechanical one that you kind of push a couple things down and open up, that way a kid can't get into it, is going to be a really, really good option for you, because you do not want your kid just rummaging underneath the bed and then getting, say, a firearm that's in this firearm case. I think you have an obligation if you have kids to have a safe. So I know we definitely didn't cover every little topic. If you've got some advice that worked for you as a new gun owner, or maybe some of the other myths and things that maybe you heard or you dealt with as you were going through it, feel free to drop those into the comments. That way we can all learn together. Thanks for getting all the way to this portion of the video. I know most of you don't. As we always do, we end with comment of the week. This week's comment is brought to you by Make Asylums Great Again. What's your malfunction? Well, my friend, that is a really, really long list. I'm sure it all began in 2004 when my mother did not pick me up for my birthday, and then she never came back. This has led to crippling abandonment issues as well as the ever-present mommy issues. So that is my malfunction. The rest of the list is too long to go through, so we don't have time for that. If you watch this video and don't subscribe, you're adding to the abandonment issues that I have, and my problems will get ever deeper. So that means you have to subscribe. Don't leave me, okay? I promise you, there's more F-tier content heading your way.